has arrived, is here. That's when you try to say two things at once, and you split the difference.
Does that mean that they can see our dark circles and bags better?
Yes. Oh. Yes. All the flaws and imperfections. But Keaton, we're a talk show. We're not here for our looks.
That is true.
We're here for our analysis, our contribution to the discussion. So, to start up that discussion, let's kick things off with the daily review. Now, the first story is ironic for me to identify. I found it interesting that we have a labor dispute once again, but this seems to be a bit different than before, because not only was the employer taken by surprise by the fact that employees were protesting. According to the employer, we're taking steps to rectify, or we're in the process of solving the problem or whatever. But also the union did not necessarily seem to be, fully involved in the protest action. And I'm speaking about the Chaguaramas Development Authority. And it seems as though from the side of the workers, there are claims of a lot of issues with regards to neglect, with regards to benefits. I think in a couple of cases they had medical plans were not sufficient, or families weren't able to access benefits in the case of some unfortunate incidents occurring. With regards to the health and safety of the working conditions, or the availability of the correct equipment. So the workers are protesting about a lot of things. Now, to be fair, it is their side. So the actual particulars, maybe some things are over-exaggerations, maybe not. But I found it interesting that this is not, we want we money, we want we raise. They're protesting about a whole host of issues, about their working conditions, about other terms, yes, benefits, but we're not talking about direct salaries. We're talking about other terms of employment. And it's seemingly not being led by the union. So this seems to be a very different situation than what I've usually talked about, where I look at a union and they want more money. This union want more money, that union want more money, next union want more money. But the workers here, I'm not saying that the union disagrees with the workers or has a fallen out with the workers, but it's just that the workers here went up front and said, hold on, some things need to change in our place of employment, because they pointed out, one politician said, Chaguaramas is like this, there's so much potential here, and yet we are working in squalor. That's my paraphrasing of his
statement.
Actually,
that is a fair assumption. Now, I'm glad that you raised the issue that it's not a typical protest, and the union seemed to, well, members of the union, other members of the union were rather surprised at some of its members actually protesting. Let me just digress for a moment. You see this agency, this authority, the Chaguaramas Development Authority. I've had an issue with this particular government organization for a number of years. The reason being that it was designed and set up to try and take Chaguaramas to its full potential. Mm-hmm. And records in terms of finances of how much money is pumped into CDA annually is information that is not easily available. Let's just put it that way. The issue is that I have no clue what this authority actually does. Because if I take a few examples, the boardwalk in Chaguaramas,
right,
they're in charge of that and the development of that.
Yeah, but how old is that?
We can't even maintain that.
Right.
Age is one thing, but
yes.
I don't know when was the last time you were able to take a trip there. It's not in a very nice condition. Don't get me wrong, people patronize it and utilize it. That's excellent. But you would think because you have the flow of individuals there that you would actually upkeep that.
Or what was the plan to get whatever revenue to upkeep it? You build a thing. You have no plan for a revenue stream? There's nothing big.
And this is the thing, as I said, forgive me for digressing from the protest for a moment, but if I were to take a microscopic view, I also take a look at the how clean the bay actually is. And that is the fault not only of the patrons and the citizens who actually utilize the bay and the facilities, or the Aussies, but also it's the CDA who should be there to actually pick up where it is. I mean, that's a part of it. If I take a look at Tucker Valley, for example, Tucker Valley has a lot of potential. Did you know that Tucker Valley, the lights don't work, the cameras in Tucker Valley don't work? There are men at the booth that you enter the bay at, right? You enter the bay, and there are men at the booth. It's a CDA-run booth. They're not working for the CDA. They're charging people to enter the car park, and yet the CDA does nothing about it. So, as I said, from the time this story was mentioned, and from the time the CDA was brought to light, I was like, this is an organization I've had issues with for a number of years, and this just fuels it even further. Because what the workers are protesting about are not wages. They're actually, this protest was focused mostly on
they did mention cost of living, but
they mentioned there was a medical assistance allowance,
yes,
of which they did mention. They said they have not received that as yet, but they were protesting mostly for the working conditions, right? Some of the living quarters, they suggested that one of the roofs were actually damaged. They had to repair themselves.
Of a kitchen and management management didn't come out to assess.
Right, the electrics were, they had to rewire the place themselves in order to have some light. They actually called management and tried to raise the alarm over this issue. They're yet to hear from them. They said it's infested by rats, by snakes, by other, of course, insects and animals. Nothing is being done about it. And, you know, all well and good, yes, we haven't heard the CDA addressing those particular issues, but it's one side of the story. Thing is, given where Shahramas is located and given the flora and the fauna, I'm not going to doubt it at all. Thing is the CDA doing its job? I don't think so. The CDA is just another opportunity for some in order to have an income. And need I say, possibly a very good income as well.
What is interesting now is that the union president, I believe,
James Alexander.
No, James, this is NUFG, Union President General James Lambert. He said he was taken aback. There's a process to these things. When you go and do things on your own and they backfire, everyone is affected. So I understand he's afraid of things being backfired. But I believe according to him, he said that the union does not have any... There was no trade disputes between the CDA and the union. So I do have to wonder, this is my one question with regards to unions, and this is not an indictment, I'm not blaming if anything yet, but I have questions. Why is it that the workers seem to have these grievances, but the union seems to be unaware enough of it to the point where you're taken aback? You see, it's similar to your comments about the minister and the Ministry of Education. Oh, you're concerned now that they're so enraged that they're going to speak out about it? Because regardless of whether this is the right process or the wrong process, the point is they feel upset. And somebody needed to guide them, whether it is how to address their issues, how to frame it, how to present it, or perhaps there are explanations for most or all of these things, unlikely as it may seem just on the surface of it. But again, we only have one side. But if there is somebody to guide them, well, look, this is the reasonable explanation, that is the reasonable explanation. So don't go and protest these specific things because, you know, it won't be reasonable for you to do so. The situations themselves are being managed appropriately.
And this is where the NUGFW representative for the CDA workers, Damien Alexander, you have to wonder what his communication as representative is like with the, of course, the executive of the union. And it's interesting the point that you've just raised. How concerned with the overall union, and you just pointed it out, would be with this matter. You see unions protesting majority of the times, labor. They do protest working conditions, but across the board here in TNT, many institutions that are government run, working conditions are poor and appalling. Even in the waterfront, there was mold. They had to close down the office for a day in order to try and get rid of mold. The thing is, for me, the overall issue that has been highlighted here is the operations of the CDA.
Which chamber in the Red House has been more or less unavailable to be used mere months after it was erupted. Okay, we're running out of time, so I just wanted to touch on to the next topic. And to segue, I will say this. Chaguaramas does have an issue with regards to this one road in policy. So part of me feels as though the development of it, really and truly, how far could it go? Because you say it's a potential gold mine, but what's the point if we can't get people in? Now,
the development of Chaguaramas could go as far as whoever, certain individuals, certain citizens, certain businessmen, if they have that opportunity, and if they want that opportunity, Chaguaramas is theirs.
Yeah, but you see, so the lack of infrastructure in this situation, transportation, hamstrings any plans to further develop Chaguaramas. And I wanted to highlight this through the Minister of National Security. I'm not blaming him in this case, but he responded to the tragedy with the Superior fire, where I believe a mother and daughter was killed. His response was, well, you know, it's unfortunate. The machines in that fire station and the nearby fire station, they were out for maintenance. They had to utilize machines in the next closest location, which was 12 minutes away. Residents say, well, no, it took 40 minutes for the fire service to respond, and that could have been the difference to prevent the tragedy. He was saying, well, we have fire tenders coming in. We have new machineries coming in. We have plans to upgrade and all of these things, right? The long and short is, he's not necessarily in charge of the budget. So I'm not going to put all of the blame on this situation on him, because I am questioning, right? The implications out of the article is to how much of the maintenance and the upkeep of fire service equipment has been left by the wayside because they short-tailed their budget. Because again, resources are scarce. And this is where I will agree with the cynics when you say, well, look, don't blame the government with regards to not having enough money, because we are seeing the dividends. This tragedy is a dividend that pays off from the investment of the corruption and the mismanagement throughout the years. All of the money for all of the failed programs, or all of the money that's blatantly being, you know, given to, well, whichever financier through contracts whose rental agreements cannot be found, or programs like live sports.
Let me just interject for a moment. Prior to the budget being read last year for fiscal 2022-2023, the fire services have been raising the issue of appliances not being available, as well as the necessary equipment such as breathing apparatus. That has not been addressed thus far. The Minister of National Security only issued a response because the Prime Minister went on social media and issued a response. And I'm not being unfair to the Minister of National Security, but it's just plain and simple as it is. Because he's only issued a response because of that. Let's be realistic. Furthermore, isn't it quite unfortunate that every time there is some tragedy and there's not the response that is required, all these appliances, all these machinery, the necessary equipment, always down for maintenance?
Always. Or the tragedy is linked to a lack of maintenance, a lack of proper management because of a lack of resources, etc., etc. And again, this is the dividend. If you want to vote in people who are going to let you eat a food, right, and then their friends eat a food, and they do it in different ways. As you reminded me, the Minister of Finance, yesterday or the Minister of Finance said, well, we are fortunate that we are seen as less corrupt.
Listen, we have to take a break, but the simple conclusion is, here in TNT, our leaders are absolutely good at formulating excuses, not formulating solutions. And that is why we're in the mess that we're in today, all around. Let's take a break here on Talking Points.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex Pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at Southern Main Road, MacBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, heart disease claims a life every 34 seconds. Our relative sitting down across the table is experiencing a heart attack as we speak.
It is important to seek medical attention urgently because prompt treatment of a heart attack could prevent extensive damage and death. Therefore, one should try to get to a hospital as soon as possible, preferably by ambulance.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Talking Points here on WESN. Sean Michael Small and I, we're very pleased to welcome back to Talking Points a commentator that joins us every Wednesday, Miss Karen Nunes Teixeira. Good morning, Karen.
Morning to you, morning to Sean, and of course your viewers and listeners. Always happy to be here with you on a Wednesday, actually in person. rather than virtually.
And I suppose, considering what transpired last week and I think the week before, I'm fortunate enough to be the one to welcome Karen this morning. So, anyway, let's get into the conversation. The IMF Article 4 report. It's something of which the Minister of Finance sought to address. And, well, you may have differing views. We may share differing opinions on his actual address. But before we even get into that analysis, some might question, what is the role or the purpose of the International Monetary Fund and by extension the World Bank? Well, Karen yesterday reminded me of that, which I was grateful for, and I thought it rather prudent that she do the same. Just share with us that information.
Oh dear, I thought I was going to leave that all to you. Yes. And I actually mean that. But I think the issue right now is how relevant is the IMF.
Yes,
today. This is really the question that is being asked, because when the IMF was formed, and this was after World War II, I know that they announced it in 1944, but that and the World Bank were formally formed or established in 1945, which was the end of World War II. And the focus of the both institutions was really the industrialized countries and the rebuilding of the industrialized countries. So the role of the IMF, as perceived then, was to ensure global economic stability, give monitoring surveillance of the economy of the various countries, and provide technical assistance, and then crisis lending, which usually meant developing countries. What happened was in 1970s, the Bretton Woods Conference no longer used gold as a standard against which you determine the value of your currency.
Yes.
And many countries went into the floating their currency. Trinidad did it, but we did a managed float. And so from that point of view, the role of the IMF they had no longer any role when it came to that, because Bretton Woods was gone.
Yes.
The second issue with them was that the surveillance, and that has gotten them into a lot of hot water, because their attitude generally has been very harsh, very rigid, and very focused on three things. Current accounts. Your value of your exports more than your imports. They look at that. They look at not so much at inflation, but they look at your growth, and they look at your real GDP. So from what I'm saying there, the role has never really been on the socioeconomic development of the country. To improve all those things, what the IMF has always recommended was devaluation. They insisted on reducing your the staff, public staff, privatization, and a number of things. And what has happened over the years, that many of these countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, I think Jamaica is the only real success story, to be very honest with you, has been that these countries have been left worse off than when IMF came in. And in fact, because of the strict and harsh measures they imposed, they left them more impoverished. They had to leave Afghanistan because they were given instructions to leave. But many of the countries in Africa, etc., and in India and Central America, many of them were left worse off than before because of those very same things. So, coming quickly now to the 1990s, I think after the experience, especially in countries like Jamaica, where there was so much civil unrest because of the harsh measures that the IMF insisted on imposing, and instead of urging foreign direct investment, the opposite happened. The IMF itself has admitted to taking a softer approach, recognizing that you must maintain socioeconomic programs, but at the same time reduce your social spending. So there's a soft approach. And to end that part and to have you really come in at this point is that what you're seeing that reflected, and they say it, they have said it, I'm not the one seeing it, they have actually said it. And I think what really acted as a trigger was the 2008-2009 global crisis, when Greece had to come to them to borrow money, when European countries had to come to them to borrow money. So it's no longer developing poor countries. Right, and also an article which I have not been able to recover, but the article spoke about the differential in treatment to developed countries versus developing in terms of the interest rates, conditionalities, and so on. So bottom line, we reached now to 2023, and the IMF, and it is clear, in my respectful opinion, maybe the Minister of Finance, I could almost think he could have dictated most of that report.
That's a rather interesting comment.
So, I mean,
I know he didn't, but it was...
It's interesting when you look at the journey of the IMF now. I've seen stories where there was a lot of political infighting, and you have to understand, at the time, these were people applying economic theory, not necessarily knowing 100% if it will work or not, because it's just a theory that they ascribe to. It's not even necessarily the only theory. But Greece, as Karen said, it really was the tipping point, because it showed, well, look, austerity measures here in this situation where we could account for it's not a third world nation where we could blame this or we could blame that on what's going wrong and corruption and whatever. And there probably is corruption or could be corruption in Greece. But the point is the austerity measures, it was very apparent to the IMF that it didn't work. That changed them now. Now, well, at least some of the people who are either in the IMF or former IMF actually promoted more with regards to deficit spending. We covered this on Talking Point before, with regards to the fact that once your growth is greater than your debts, right, you could sustain increasing your debt, and that's why Japan is, like twice, 200, over 100%. I can't remember
USA too?
Yeah, USA as well, right?
Yeah.
Their debt to GDP ratio is a ridiculous figure because their economic growth can sustain it. At least that's the theory. COVID is kind of challenging that.
And that's precisely a good point. The challenges with economics and the study of economics, it is majority theoretical, although there are arguments that are put forward.
Well, here's the thing with COVID. COVID is a situation where a lot of economies are now in crisis. And coming out of the first half of the 20th century, the world saw what happened after World War I, where Germany's recovery, they were basically hit with a lot of sanctions, or they had to pay reparations, and it kind of caused a certain gentleman to come into power, a warmonger, and sparked off World War II. So afterwards, the rebuilding of Germany and Japan after World War II was not about, inflicting punishment on them, on austerity measures on them, and all of these things. It was to build up their economies as fast as possible. I think we have to, it's interesting the IMF did not learn that lesson, and it took a long time and a lot of bad examples for them to realize austerity doesn't work.
Well, the thing is that
coming out of the pandemic, that is something to look at.
During COVID-19, I wouldn't say COVID-19 has
when did
put
COVID-19
economies
start? Because I want to say
COVID in
end of
China.
2019.
It started to be exposed
COVID-19.
between the mid and end of 2019 in China, but it became a global
but in
thing
Trinidad,
in
March
March
2020.
Right?
It got global. I think Italy was the first country at the start of 2020, but it was recognized out of China.
Actually, I think in December initially there were a couple of cases outside of China.
But I'm talking about the economic impact of COVID. When did it really start?
So really, you're looking at February, March.
Of what
when
year?
Italy, 2020, when Italy started.
I have something here from the central bank, just to see. In 2019, this is the central bank, saying there was a 30% decline in flows for currency due to weaker energy performance. The energy sector being the main source of supply to the market. This is 2019.
Yes, so just before COVID, just before Carnival,
this was happening before COVID.
The Minister of Energy, he had a press conference where he had to defend the situation because I believe at that time it wasn't the negative $67 or whatever. It was $20 a barrel. So and for years before COVID, which we've said before, we've had this situation where a lack of foreign exchange because energy prices were too low. And
I think also what we have to bear in mind, just going back to the IMF for a moment,
right,
is that because this is how the IMF has created and it has been utilized many times as the big bad wolf. We've heard that all the time before, austerity measures in particular. There are some nations that actually have adopted austerity measures on their own, independent of that of the IMF. For example, the United Kingdom under Theresa May as well, she had austerity measures in place. She had to come out and admit publicly where we have to label it as austerity measures. She tries to divert around this. But the thing is with the IMF is that because they focus on cutting your public expenditure so much, whether it be social expenditure and whether it be the actual workforce that is employed by the state, it's something that governments are very hesitant to utilize now. Though the IMF has also said, we need to take a step back because theory does not always equal to the result that we hope it looks for. This is why Colin Imbert has suggested it before. Though there are points that are listed, we're not signed to any agreement with the IMF, and therefore we don't have to adopt any of these things.
But on a principle level, on a technical level, the idea of cutting back on public expenditure in TNT, we're not saying that we're cutting back on healthcare and we're reducing the police force and we're cutting back on government services. We could cut back on public expenditure in TNT by actually having the public service not have redundant people, not have people on the payroll that don't provide any productivity in their job whatsoever, not having these over-bloated utility companies.
But it is not...
That is a place to start.
Only that.
I know it's not
No,
only
but if
that.
you take a look at... I keep going back. Sorry, Karen, go ahead.
Hello. Just want to remind you, before we go off on a tangent about the state of trying to be with economy, what we were going to look at were the 20 points that the IMF made and Colin Imbert's response to it. We can't look at all 20, but I want to highlight a few of them and to see how the headlines are very misleading. And when you look at it, and if you look at it, you really are seeing that the IMF is saying we are going down, 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 unless, does Dragonfield come to mind?
I don't even know if that's going to save us.
Yeah, is that going to happen? That's the first thing. And Manatee, I had Kevin Ramnarayan on, and Manatee says it's supposed to come on 2020. He said, so I asked him, I said, you keep saying Manatee, so do we need Dragonfield if we have Manatee? He says, no. Manatee will not supply us with enough natural gas. And natural gas, the prediction or what the projection is that we need to produce
4.5 billion cubic.
4 billion cubic feet of natural gas every day to be able to meet the needs of our downstream industry, LNG, electricity.
Yes.
And we are not near that. And we will not be near that based on what we are producing.
Well, Karen, I'm sorry.
The reason why I brought up the fact that some of the IMF ideas could apply to TNT is because the minister seems very, very, he wants to, they're the worst. Except when they're praising me, they're the worst.
Well, I'll tell you what, Karen, I haven't forgotten your 20 points at all. I think we're actually going to address that in a moment. We do have to take a break. Cutting public expenditure, I just wanted to quickly chime in and say that, if you take a look at family services and social development, as an example, you don't necessarily have to slash the budget. You have to be smart in how you give away money.
Well, that too.
But anyway, let's take a break here on Talking Points. When we return, we actually get into those 20 points. As Karen said, not every single point could be addressed within the time frame, but we have some time to get into a bit this morning. So we'll be right back after this.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Force's flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of
of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
You are viewing WESN. If you wish to see WESN continue producing independent, high-quality programming free of censorship, you can contribute by making a financial contribution to WESN through our account.
Welcome back to the program. So we've had we're trying our very best not to digress further. Let's get straight into the meat of the. It's very easy, but we will hold back for now. And Karen, the
I'll hold on to.
What are the?
Well, you know what parents do? They pinch their children and pinch him.
well, that's actually fine. If Karen gives you the look, then yes, stay quiet. But Karen,
why just me? Why just me? Karen,
okay,
what are the points you want to look at out of the 20?
So there are a lot of points, but I want to start by making a very broad statement. I think, as I said, the IMF really has tried to give a more soft, a less harsh positioning, especially with regard to conditionalities. And I think part of it may be because they made a big, I don't know if they could explain it. Last year, they had projected that growth would be 5% in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, we know it was half of that. And as some people say, if you get 1% wrong, but 2.5%, how you got it so wrong? The reason you got it so wrong is because I anticipated that when oil prices were doing very well, not production, we do have the production in Trinidad, prices had gone shooting through the roof. I think they projected the growth based on that. And when things started to fall apart, and you read the central bank report also, it started falling apart, then the projections were not what they anticipated. So I will just look at some of the headlines. And what I've said, and make a general statement. I'll say one thing that was very positive, that you can't twist it around at all. The debt to GDP, the government has been able to bring the debt to GDP down to 74.something%, which is less than their projected 75%. So there's no gainsaying that. But when you look at other things, the headlines, economic recovery ongoing. And then when you read the story and what it says ongoing, but then they tell you that there's an increase in inflation. They're saying that now, because of imported food and fuel and flooding, they're saying that there's an economic recovery is ongoing, but at the same time, when you read other points that they have made, they're saying that two things have happened. Inflation is obviously a big number for us, but we simply do not have the production. They say the fiscal position is swinging to a deficit. And after going on and on about a 0.3% and making a point of saying that at one time, for the first time in 10 years, and that it was at one time in the height of COVID, minus 11.7. I don't know if the IMF didn't look at other countries like Jamaica and Barbados. In 2021, they were in 0.something. All of them were in negative positions. But look at the kinds of recoveries that they were able to make by 2022. 4.4%. No, I think 4.4% is the Barbados. The ECCU countries, 4.4%. Jamaican, 5.4%. So what is 0.3%? I couldn't understand it.
And that's with tourism, which is not fully recovered.
Exactly. You know, so I couldn't understand how they had it's almost like a party. Then they're talking about growth now. recovery expected to maintain, but it is all dependent on the production of oil and gas prices stay. And we know that the three, Colibri, Cassia, and the De Novo Zandali project cannot give us the the production of natural gas that we need to facilitate the downstream industry. Ammonia prices have been cut in more than half. Methanol prices.
Go on.
Methanol prices have also, the methanol companies, they're laughing at me. The methanol, and I know, my God, sorry, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Oh my God.
It's fine, no worries about that at all.
Methanol prices have also, they're saying, the companies, two of them are saying, we're not going to reopen two of those industries unless you give us a 5-year natural gas deal. And don't forget what's going on with Maduro, with Dragonfield.
Yes.
Mr. Maduro has no, I think, in my view, he says he's looking at every NDA, which is included the one that was negotiated between the dismissed Minister of Energy,
yes,
I can't remember
who was
his name.
recently fired, dismissed,
alleged corruption among other top officials, and he has said that he's putting his focus on oil. And put it on oil because oil prices are doing well because OPEC has cut back.
Yes,
it's now gone up to $80, and they're obviously fighting the United States with their Willow project because they are now producing oil. So what I'm saying is the balance of risk to growth is tilted to the downside. But that was true, and that's because of disruption in domestic oil and gas production, sharper than expected. They've also said that building fiscal buffers, and what were the fiscal buffers they built? The Heritage and Stabilization Fund. To begin with, the minister withdrew 8 times from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund to the tune of $1.8 billion. So you're going to tell me that is, I thought foreign exchange is a result of the import value of your imports.
But didn't they say part of the good news was how much they were able to put back?
$354 million.
Exactly. When I saw that, I was like, because our foreign exchange position is relatively unchanged over the last however many years.
But it took out $1.87 billion.
That's what I mean. Outside, after they took out, it hasn't grown back to that. It's just stayed at that level.
And the point I'm making is that they're praising them for
yes,
HSF.
Yes, that was one. If you weren't going to mention it, that was one of the sections that floored me.
The other one that the foreign exchange saying is more than adequate. Well, when you read their assessment of how much import cover we have, I think they said, oh gosh, look at how Keaton is keeping the image of self-control.
It's just the dog.
I'm gonna pinch him. Foreign exchange is the central bank and the IMF adds the amount of import cover that we're getting from 6.8 billion. And by the way, they have said in the last few months the drawdown from foreign exchange in 2022 is some of the largest drawdowns. And do not forget what is propping up the foreign exchange reserves in Trinidad. What is propping it up? The special drawing rights, which is based on the quota we are allocated. The money from the HSF, which was put inside there, and also the bond, raising the bonds on the global market. Yeah. How are you talking about how these buffers are so wonderful?
Well, it goes back to the whole.
I mean, I can't understand this report.
The risk of growth.
The study minister wrote this report.
You did mention that actually in the
last. The balance of risk on growth was tilted to the downside. So you're going to acknowledge the fact that we have these, especially in oil and gas, we have these, external factors that could cause our growth to be negative, right?
And guess what? And they are saying to you that the reason why the economy is looking to is because of oil and gas prices.
Right. So how can you recognize the risks of it falling, right? And then say, but this is fine, you're not going to grow. Because, and I think this is the thing, right? we need to also understand that as much as OPEC is going to try to push for gas oil prices to be high, the nations of the world are going to put things in place to keep energy prices manageable.
Yes,
we're not going to see what we saw last year
we must
on a regular.
Bear in mind
but even if the prices are going to be high or low, how is that helping us?
But this is the thing. 2 days ago,
we do not refine anymore.
2 days ago, when we learned of the news that the global energy giants made the decision to actually reduce their output of oil, immediately I grew rather worrisome, and I think that's putting it lightly, as for our current situation here in TNT. So given the fact of how global markets are, even the cap that Europe has put on Russian gas, this is good news for Russia, by the way. It's not good news for Trinidad and Tobago. Issue is, now that the reports, and we're getting into detailed analysis about the reports, what you have suggested that the Minister of Finance had some level of hand. You meant it. You meant it. No. I know you meant it in a humorous manner, and I take it in that manner.
Yes.
But for me, I'm like, Karen, you raise a very interesting point, but I could understand where you're going with it. It does not necessarily give context to reality, and therefore you have to question
contradictions.
Yes.
Precisely, who was thinking about these things before putting it to paper?
And excuse me, you know how much time they spend on diversification? One line.
Yeah.
One line. Diversification is needed. I remember because I said that is all they had to say about it. And then they talked about the employment rate, which is another discussion, because the labor participation rate, which is, they say, lower the labor participation rate, the more likely that the economy is not doing well, because the labor participation rate are persons who could be looking for jobs but are not looking or have stopped looking for jobs. And that does not include the homemaker, the disabled, the retired persons. And they work out the employment rate from the labor participation rate. So if only 55 out of 100 people are in the labor participation rate, and you then determine of that how much are employed. And by the way, the definition of unemployment is not that you have a job, you know, you either don't have a job or you have been looking unsuccessfully last 4 weeks.
You are able to work and you
so
cannot.
how, and for a specific period. So, and that's what they talked about. They mentioned, by the way, the statistical information is so important. And
all that being said, you know the irony of ironies?
What's the irony?
Port of Spain Corporation cannot retain workers.
What?
Port of Spain, government jobs are, despite the fact that they're bloated and probably, you know, overpaid because they don't work, they can't even retain workers. The labor market is so out of whack in this country that we have this problem, on top of the fact that corporations can't even.
We have to look and find out what is the reason for that, because they say that where you have a high labor participation rate and a low unemployment rate, that means that both those two together tell you that you have a very healthy economy. Our labor participation rate now is 54.7, when the average is 62, 61 globally. And then you look at the unemployment rate, it's 4.7, they say, but it's 4.7 of 54.7%. And so what the question you have to ask is, why are people not working? Is it because there's a mismatch in jobs? Is it because there's not a work, you're not working for what you call a living wage? There are so many factors that go into that.
I'm not trying to be facetious, but we're not even able to achieve average. Yeah. We're not even able to achieve average labor force participation rates.
And usually on these lists, we end up being so in the middle, and we're happy for that. It's like, why? Why are we happy for that?
What
does it say? Certain economic indices, you know, where are we ranking in the world?
No, but when you look at labor
but in this we don't. We rank
but what you have to know is they never tell you about that. They tell you about the unemployment rate.
Yeah.
So before you get to the unemployment rate, You have to get what is the labor participation rate and why it is
so
what
then, Karen,
it is.
the 55% are not only working
50,
is not only on about 55%. It's not only working for themselves, but they're also working to try and prop up the 45%.
Yes.
That are not able
yes,
to.
and that's why we also have issues with NIS and all of those things. Let's look at another thing of irony.
It says when they go bankrupt by they gave a figure in the next sum in 2030. 2030 we will go bankrupt.
Austerity measures usually would lead to, you can't pay for government services, the maintenance, the upkeep of your infrastructure, etc. We don't have IMF austerity measures, and we still have those problems, right? Look, we just talked about it with the fire service and the maintenance of the appliances, the maintenance of the roadworks, the sustainability of the health sector.
But they were praised for maintaining fiscal discipline during the
yes, but I'm questioning with regards to how. The details of that. I know. I understand because again,
and if you look at my face, you understand.
When you say we are fiscally disciplined because we cut back spending, but we're going to waste money in a lot of areas.
How about that solar project, which is saying has gone up by 60%, has not started? The story of this government. Can I just say this?
Yeah, sure.
Sanders, Dragonfield, which I think we're going to have to put that on the back thing. You notice we don't have a picture with him and Maduro. You notice Maduro has had nothing to say. And do you know that the Minister of Energy, with whom the NDA was negotiated, is gone?
The only thing we believe that he has commented is the fact that the lack of cash remuneration bothers him. That's the only thing we know.
Guess what? If you are Maduro and you have a lot of oil, and you realize the days of oil are coming slowly to an end, and you have heavy sour oil which has a lot of carbon and sulfur, you know that you're going to, just like his minister was doing, his minister was able to sell oil, I don't know whose pocket it went into, but sell oil to places like Syria and the Middle East. So he's going to continue down that line, selling to Colombia, and he will say natural gas, I think you got to take a step back, because that is not where the money is right now.
All right, well, we have to pause there. I think I feel vindicated knowing that I gave the Prime Minister chrysanthemums and not roses when the announcement over the Dragon Gas deal. They call from Sanford, I'm talking about you. I gave chrysanthemums, not roses. But
wow, are you toting?
It's not that I'm toting. You see, I'm very wise with how I spend my money. Money hard to get, money hard to come by. In the words of the Honorable Prime Minister.
Somebody tell that to the $1.5 billion airport for the 3 million passengers, tourists coming to the island. 3 million annually, not so?
Yes,
that's what I did. Yeah, that doesn't exist right now.
And that of that 3 million, 1.2 is from Trinidad.
We can't even put things in place for the cruise ship arrivals, much less for the
solar energy project that is now seems to be falling apart.
Oh, anyway,
I don't even know who's the contractor on that.
That have a story.
I would just ask ANT Solar. Anybody?
I look forward to Wednesdays. I just get to introduce Karen and Sean, and then get to remind you we have to go for news on the hour. We'll be right back after this.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. 7 more succumbed to COVID-19. $175,000 bail for assaulting common-law wife. Laramine Gardner in court for double murder. And internationally, former U.S. President Donald Trump charged with 34 felony counts. Now for the details. 7 more persons have succumbed to the COVID-19 virus in the last week. According to the Ministry of Health's dashboard, the total death toll is now 4,379. Meanwhile, 150 positive cases have been recorded. The rolling 7-day average for deaths is 1, while for active cases, the figure is 21. There are currently 34 persons hospitalized with the virus at this time. A 48-year-old man was granted bail in the sum of $175,000 with a surety when he appeared before the Couva Magistrates Court. The accused was charged with assault occasioning actual bodily harm, threats to kill, and being armed with a weapon. A police report stated that on the 21st of December 2022, a woman and her common-law husband had a domestic dispute. During the dispute, the man allegedly dealt his common-law wife several blows with a metal fan rod and allegedly made threats to kill the woman. A 29-year-old Laramine Gardner has appeared before a San Fernando magistrate charged with the murders of Julian Batiste and Jeremiah Joseph, which occurred on January 20th. Deshaun Ross of Stella Street was charged with the offences when he appeared before the San Fernando Magistrates Court. Jeremiah and Julian, both of Laramine, were at a mini-mart in the area in the company of friends when a man armed with a gun entered and shot at them before escaping through a window. The 2 victims died at the scene. In international news now, a stone-faced Donald Trump made a momentous court appearance on Tuesday as the only ex-president to be charged with a crime, as he was confronted with a 34-count felony indictment accusing him in a scheme to bury allegations of extramarital affairs during his first White House campaign. The arraignment in a Manhattan courtroom was a stunning and humbling spectacle for the former president, putting him face to face with prosecutors who bluntly accused him of criminal conduct and setting the stage for a possible criminal trial in the city where he decades ago became a celebrity. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Talking Point, and just before we open up the phone lines, we give you the viewer the opportunity to join the conversation. Karen, concluding commentary?
One, just very simple. I think at the end of the day, the future of Trinidad and Tobago's economy, to a large extent, depends on price and production of natural gas. And as it stands, I don't think that the future looks very rosy, certainly in the medium to short to medium term. And that is my conclusion on that. So,
Sean?
Just want to say that we always talk about diversification when these things occur, when situations like this occur, but we never really start. Yes, because it's not going to solve our problems immediately, but the point is we have to start. It's a long-term process. We have to start it, and nobody seems to have the political will or courage to start the process.
We're guessing at the point where starting it is getting, it's probably past that stage. We should have started this years ago when we still benefited from oil and gas revenues, when we were essentially the gem of the Caribbean in that sense, economic-wise. But unfortunately, we're now at a point where desperation, and possibly desperation, could lead to irrational decisions, and I can only hope that's not the case. But I'll tell you what, let's open up the phone lines now, and you, the viewers, can join the conversation this morning. Yes, we spoke mostly on the IMF Article 4 report and Trinidad and Tobago, but if you'd like to comment on anything, whether it be the economics or current situations happening here in TNT, feel free to do so. We only ask, as per usual, just do not call in at the very final minute. When you do call in, please be mindful of the timing of your contribution. We also want to give everybody an opportunity. Sometimes 4 minutes is a lot. And finally, kindly mute your television, please. Good morning, caller from San Fernando.
Good morning, Karen. Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
And good morning, Keaton Shah.
My good friend.
Firstly, let me say, Karen, thanks for cracking the whip this morning. to get them back on track. That was very appreciated. I have to. This is a morning of critique, actually, and starting with going back to yesterday, Sean, when you had Mr. Cavallo on the station.
Yeah.
You all brought Mr. Cavallo on because of an issue with the taxi drivers and to get his side of the story. And unfortunately, you all let Mr. Cavallo go on and pay lip service to the issue that the taxi drivers had, which was their payment and their money issues. And he said, and if you remember his comment on that, it was so flippant. I was so flabbergasted with that.
Yes, I do recall his comment
that he made.
Yes, the business that I'm providing is more, and it should be more relevant to them than the money that's owed to them. Something to that extent.
Yeah, that was, yes.
And okay, and that's my issue with that. Secondly, you all spoke about the issue of repairs with the what do you call it? The
CDA
fire service.
No, sorry, yes. The fire service, yes.
And there is an issue throughout state enterprises with respect to maintenance of anything. We are good at building and buying new things, but we have fallen down with maintenance. The only state enterprise or state agency that I think has a good maintenance program for vehicles is TNTech. Nobody else.
Yeah.
Everybody else has fallen down except TNTech.
Yeah.
That's one thing they have to give them praise with. And well, the last thing is, Karen, when you talk about the IMF, you know, I think, in my opinion, when I saw the change starting within the IMF and the World Bank issues, is when Christine Lagarde came to fore, and she somehow, I don't know if it's a woman's touch, that a woman understood better than these men, that you have to change the way you look at these things, or else everything going to fall down. I think I give praises to Christine Lagarde. I always follow her because she has transformed things, even when she was finance minister in France.
Yeah,
she
but
has looked at it differently.
Yeah, okay. I could only answer that last part. And yes, I actually was in the World Bank. I actually went to World Bank meetings and to IMF meetings when Christine Lagarde was on the representing France. And I don't want to take anything away from her, but I know and I do recall that the real change came about when suddenly the IMF was having to lend money to European countries because its role, as opposed to the World Bank, why they say that there's, to some extent duplication and does the IMF need to be lending, its purpose is crisis lending, which has a lot of conditionalities. And for the first time, we found that European countries with the global financial crisis was the wake-up call. I'm sure she played a part in it, but that, as I remember it and understand it, was the major change maker.
Call from San Fernando. I also, the first 2 points that you made, very quickly before we go to this caller. The second point first. We have an issue here in TNT across the board with we're very good at purchasing things. We're not good at maintaining it. It's because it is, in my opinion, that TNT and people of TNT do not actually understand the value of money. They do not appreciate the dollar and understand the value of the dollar. And to your first thing with respect to the interview yesterday, I appreciate the constructive criticism, and it's very much well received because I actually reviewed the interview, and I must say I was quite disappointed in myself that there were things that I let go, I let slip, and I shouldn't. So I appreciate you raising that point. It's just for us to be more mindful of that as we continue, because we want to get real answers, not allow people to pay lip service. So thank you for those 2 points. We have a call on the line with us from Chagones. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I think the problem with the IMF is not so much austerity measures, but whether the measures were appropriate to the problem. And I am speaking from the problem we had here in the 80s, when it was assumed that oil prices was the cause, the drop in oil price. The drop in oil prices may have been the trigger, but it was not the cause. It was a similar situation like we had today, government was not collecting the revenue. Government had set out to destroy their very progressive tax base by easing up the rich, getting rid of things like estate duty, which is the rich people have to pay, and all those sort of things.
Well, I will just
Again,
ask. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The problem in Trinidad, as I said, we destroyed the tax base. We wasn't collecting taxes. We had people like Johnny O'Halloran and them raiding the country, and nothing was done about that. Right? And if the same thing is going on now, and people talking about devaluation, and that is the reason I gave, I think earlier in the week, why I am against devaluation. Because it is not the cause of the problem, it is the result of the problem, it is mismanagement of the economy. Any questions before?
I will just respond to what you're saying, because I have this actually a quote from the IMF that says, since 2009, the IMF announced that it has playing greater country-specific tailoring, and the emphasis tailoring the solutions to country-specific rather than taking a generalized approach.
Prove to you that they didn't do it.
But I'm just telling you what this. But I'm not here to argue for the IMF. I'm here to tell you what the IMF has said, and the other parties said, and greater emphasis on poverty alleviation and more emphasis on growth. So I think, yes, there has been a change in the way that the IMF has operated, and Jamaica. Huh?
No, caller, Karen is not necessarily arguing your point. What she's doing is
No, I'm not saying arguing. I'm saying those things is irrelevant.
No, this is what the IMF has stated. It's not irrelevant. This is what the IMF has themselves stated.
Well, okay. The caller is basically
has his opinion.
The caller is basically saying, look, don't blame the IMF. Back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of it was potentially our fault. And I can't necessarily fault the argument. Yes, it's difficult to prove definitively, like down to the last cent. But it's a reasonable argument. It's something that we have to take seriously, because we're stuck in that same situation now. We have no IMF to blame now.
No, but when they attach conditionalities, remember they remove COLA, remember they reduce public servant salary by 10%. That was the time when this country was in a socio-economic disarray, and they had the same experience with Jamaica. So they have learned, and this is what the statement is saying from the IMF. True. I am not saying that they are going to give you a free ride, but what they are not going to do is come with the heavy hand and say, let's see, your current account surplus, okay, your debt to GDP, okay, we're looking at, in other words.
Ironically, to some extent, and I go back, I made this comment before, we're not on austerity measures, but it almost feels like it in some respects. Fiscal discipline. So, that to some extent is what the Minister of Finance is doing now. He's cutting out, he's not allocating money to a lot of different areas that are asking for it.
And I'm going to give you a little
with a heavy hand.
Which is why Minister Dukaran, former Minister Dukaran, did make the point that while the IMF has made all these points, it's, keeping accounts. Like if that's the job of of the government, it needs to look at economic expansion. It needs to look at other ways, and that is what they are not doing.
I just think that is a conversation, unfortunately, of which we have lacked here in Trinidad and Tobago. As much as we speak about diversification, what about economic expansion? We're still very much riding on the waves of oil and gas. Or okay, you know what, let me rephrase
no diversification, no ease of doing business.
I listened to myself when I said those words. I said, hold on, riding on the waves. The waves don't exist. We're just hoping. We're just hoping that there is some level of waves.
We're on the boogie board and we're watching the low tide.
But
with no waves, wondering where did it go?
But then it came back, and you just raised this point, and I was thinking about it yesterday, and it just came to my mind about the ease of doing business here in Trinidad and Tobago.
That was a point they did make.
If it is that we want investments, we want to encourage expansion, we want to encourage economic growth. There are small, they're micro enterprises, small businesses that are looking to develop. and it is extremely difficult for a business to start up here.
Do they want them to be?
And you get the
you have to ask your question.
You get the impression they do not want it to be.
And you have to ask why. And I want to say in regard to the IMF on that issue, they were able, with the arrangement they made with Jamaica, to help them with the ease of doing business so that they could open up a business within 3 days. So they were very instrumental in the technical assistance that they provided to getting the story right. Why can't we? There's a reason for that.
I hate to say this, but we played a video of a consultant, right, living in America from Africa, or at least African descent. I think she might have been from France. Or French Africa. Her thing was, look, stop blaming the past and colonialism and all of these things, right? You have to look at your laws, and are your laws conducive for business? Do your laws make it possible for business investment to come in quickly and help growth?
Let me give an example.
Does it
hamper?
Or does it benefit a small group of persons who do not have problems with ease of doing business?
Which for the rest of us means hampering.
And that is precisely the example. What I've noticed recently, there are actually a few local companies that have been popping up, or sub-companies of larger organizations that have been producing local alcohol. For example, local vodka, local gin is available on the market. Even local port is available on the market.
Who's producing it?
Vortini, for example, a small businessman, right?
Okay, that's what I want.
Of larger corporations, right? But the issue is there are other individuals whom I heard have been trying for years to get a license to actually produce alcohol locally for the market as well as for export purposes, and are unable to do so. Why? No good reasoning has actually been given other than the fact that the license in order to open the distillery has been sitting on tables for years, and they cannot seem to get that progress pushed through.
And you wonder why. And we need to look also to foreign direct investment, because a combination of foreign direct investment, creating entrepreneurial opportunities for a lot of these micro and smaller business community, and giving them a chance, allocating a certain percentage to them, and also actually participating in the growth of those things. But it benefits some people in this country.
But all I would say is this: we all know that there was a time when basically, you could have very directly bought your driver's license.
I've alleged. You heard that. You're making me look at you and say that you bought yours.
Actually, I did not. But I have heard of situations where the licensing officer basically straight out and proposed. Right? Anecdotal, it is alleged. Yes, I know. But again,
it's true. I've heard it too.
Right. But the point is, all of these small breakdowns, you don't think they're going to be larger breakdowns? You don't think that all of those licenses that were sitting on the desk not being given out, not being approved, because perhaps what was the FUL racket? It was the same thing.
I think even if you've raised that issue with licenses, not to digress too much, but I was speaking to a colleague yesterday who told me that he has to wait. No. I wasn't speaking to Colin yesterday. No, unfortunately, we didn't get to that. But I was speaking to a colleague yesterday, and he was telling me that how many weeks he has to wait for his driver's license.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. I went to renew my ID card. Yeah. Now we've gone back to black and white photo with ID card. I don't know why we've gone back to black and white, but whatever. We've gone back to black and white. No good reasoning or explanation has been given.
There's a reason, but you're not going to get the explanation.
I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get it. But I have to wait between 6.
The rental for the black and white machine is cheaper, or?
No, we ran out of coloured ink shown.
Oh.
Yes. But essentially, I have to wait 6 to 8 weeks in order to get my national ID card. I understand that we have digital transformation and they're trying to push through with that. But 6 to 8 weeks to get my ID card in a nation of 1.2 million people.
Better go back to manual.
Wait. We had $1 billion surplus and we can't afford ink.
They have to buy the ink. They have to buy the ink. And there may be some people.
Folks, by the way, feel free to interrupt us and call in, if you want to add to this or if you have some other points to
Yes.
play. I still want to respond to the caller from San Fernando's second point, but
No,
continue.
go ahead.
No, because it is a shift. It's an abrupt turn on the conversation.
And we really would like to hear how people feel maybe on the Maduro issue. Do they think that is going to become a reality? Because that gas is very important to Trinidad and Tobago if we are to realize a change in our economic status, barring diversification.
So the caller from San Fernando, his point with regards to the maintenance, and I think it was something that you said as well, or
yes, we're good at purchasing.
We're good at purchasing. We're good at new things. We could do new. We can't maintain, right? And it's not to say, look, the tragedy in Greece with the train, when the two trains were on the same track, part of that is attributed, in Greece.
Oh.
Well, there have been so many tragedies now, right?
Yeah.
Part of the problem has been due to maintenance. I would just like to point out, I think you also mentioned this, new things are opportunities for new contracts with kickbacks, right? And new things are opportunities for publicity.
All right.
Because I can't take a photo up first for a water pipe that exists. I need a new water pipe.
I appreciate your point, so I will just edit my point. We're good at purchasing, we're not very good at procurement legislation. Anyway, let's take this caller on the line with us from Cascade. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to ask a question, and I hope Karen will give me an answer, and then I will use the other 30 seconds. Please, is that permissible?
Sure.
Yes.
Good morning, Karen.
But
and
quick,
it's good
we
to
have a
see
caller
you
after you.
on set. Tell me, ma'am, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rate the performance of the current Minister of Finance?
Oh, Lord, look at what you're asking.
Fair question. What's the other point that you want to make?
I would say this. I will preface it by this, that it depends on what the role of the Minister of Finance is seen to be under this administration. It was different when I was in government. So if he is a keeper of balancing the books and see nothing more, and not being able to give us correct things on revenues and so on, I don't think I'd give him a very good rating. Maybe 5, maybe. He has a lot, 10 for confidence, 5 maybe. That's what I would say. And,
your other point, caller?
Well, could I, seeing that I didn't think my question was answered, may I ask a former Minister of Finance, what is her opinion? Do we believe that the Minister of Finance is doing his job?
Well, he's doing the job that the Prime Minister has given to him. I did not, when I was in part of the government, I understood my role as Minister of Finance as being part of a number of ministers who had, so I don't have time to go into it, but I have a feeling that his role has been determined by the current Prime Minister, with which role I do not agree.
All right, thank you very much, caller from Cascade.
We have another call. We have another call on the line.
Good morning, caller from Claxton Bay. All right, well, unfortunately, we lost that call.
Yeah, we got both calls almost at the same time, so we apologize, Claxton Bay. If you could call back, we might just have enough time to squeak you in, but other than that, I think the phone line should be closed now.
Yes, so let him call in, because what I was really trying to say is that we are all part of a team, and at the head of the team is like you have the chairman of the team, and the chairman of the company has the overall view. He's calling back. Yeah.
No, he has not called back, sorry. That was just a reminder that the phone lines will be closed in a minute. Yeah. And therefore, if you do have one contribution to make,
back. I would love to
call from Claxton Bay. We do apologize for that. Very fortunately, if I may point out, this morning, those who called in did not get cut.
Call Claxton Bay, call back.
Yes.
Okay, caller. Good morning.
I would love to call from Claxton Bay. We do apologize for that.
Caller, kindly mute the volume on your television, please.
Listen to your phone.
Yes, I'll do that as soon as they call me on.
You're on.
You are on, caller.
You're speaking to us.
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
Right, what I am concerned about, Karen was talking about the Dragon gas outfield, and then
Sean was cutting in. I find that was a bit, you know, he was shouting while Karen, I can't even understand what Karen's saying. I think he should tone down his voice a little bit.
Okay.
After the show, he could watch it and see the point I am making.
All right,
Thank you.
Okay, but I didn't, thank you for that, but I didn't view it like that. I mean, you know, Sean got animated about a topic, you know, the Dragonfield, as if you didn't understand my point was that right now the Dragonfield, yeah, well, I think we're getting a closing call, so the next time I'm on.
No, Karen,
go finish off. Okay, no, I think the Dragonfield is not going to be high on the list for Maduro at this point in time. I think his focus is going to be on oil. Why do I say that? Of the fossil fuels, his oil is very heavy and very sour. America has gone and started something that they said they were never going to do, drilling for oil. OPEC has cut back on their supply of oil. So right now he's making hay while the sun shines. Colombia has opened up his borders, and they do supply oil to Colombia. So right now I think the Maduro's focus is dealing with the corruption, the politics in his country, finding out, and I'm sure that was going on for some time. He's dealing with the politics in his own country. He's dealing with making the best from the oil. And I don't think right now, with natural gas trading at $2 and a cent, that was yesterday, and it keeps going down, that natural gas is high on the agenda. And in addition to which, the conditions that were put for the Dragonfield, for them to build the gas line by Shell, is they gave them a 2-year license. I don't know if they could do it in 2 years, and there's no cash, only in kind. Why would Maduro want to look at a country that could only give them in kind when he could get cash from all those Middle Eastern countries and other suppliers? So bottom line, I think, and also too, you did not see at any time Maduro make any statement, nor the minister, well, he probably knew he was on the out anyhow, but no photo opportunity. So I think that the Dragonfield for the moment is a lost cause, and we're going to have to struggle along with the production of what we are getting from Colibri, Cassia, and the Dandoli. So that's my answer.
For the moment, it is a lost cause, but we can only hope that changes.
The thing is, it makes sense to concentrate on oil for Maduro. I think, one, because it might be easier for him to exploit it, and two, natural gas is probably going to be seen as more valuable later into the future than oil. So he needs to capitalize on this,
and he is doing
as much as possible while it's still valuable.
And remember, they are the largest supply of reserves of oil in the world. So if I were he, and he needs cash,
but I think
he's going to put his emphasis on
between
oil.
Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East, and some countries of the Middle East, he will have customers.
There you go.
He will never run out of customers.
India, China.
So what are we saying basically?
We might be buying oil from
What
him.
we'll be saying basically is the Dragonfield, it doesn't look good right now.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah,
chrysanthemums might be a bit too much.
Well,
right, there we go.
I'll hold on that.
So I explained it hopefully.
Yes. Well, Karen, thank you very much. Caller from Claxonby, we appreciate your constructive criticism. We will all bear that in mind going forward. My co-host is very passionate, so we give him that opportunity this morning. But we will bear that in mind. Thank you very much. Karen Nunes Teixeira.
Enjoying that a little too much there, Keaton.
Anyway, Karen Nunes Teixeira, thank you very much for your presence once more. It's always a privilege and a pleasure.
Thank you, and I always like being on the show with both of you. You're all a fantastic duo, and I love the sense of humor and the knowledge that you bring to the show, and I'm happy to be associated with it.
Well, we're very much pleased, and thank you very much for that. I mean, as I've always stated, Sean and I learn quite a lot from you as well, so your presence is educational and informative to all of us. Sean Michael Small, good having you again, my friend.
Yeah, I know, but you sure?
The images are not in HD, his voice is in HD as well, isn't it?
I know, right? Listen, at least no one can complain that they can't hear and understand what I'm saying.
Anyway,
the Minister of Finance needs to fix his audio next press conference.
I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Points, and just remember, today is a good day to have a good day, and should it go good, we'll all see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.